I recognise the signs of a cornea rejection, and this is what can happen with any cornea transplant. It can be rejected at any time because it is a foreign tissue in my body. I have somebody else's cornea, and my body might find it and go, that's not supposed to be there. Let's send those T cells out and get rid of it. And that can happen at any time, so we have to be very careful. Luckily, there are some different drugs, some different eye drops that can be taken to minimize and even reverse a rejection episode. I think I've been through about 5 of them between the 2 eyes since I've had cornea transplants, and the majority of them have been fine. After working the second night, I could feel like I know what it feels like to have a cornea rejection, and this is what it felt like. And after a couple of days, and I started to put in the medication myself, and decided the next morning, I think it was a Saturday, to go into the eye casualty in a hospital in Copenhagen. And I went, first off you go into triage, so I went to the emergency doctor, vagtlærer is what it's called in Danish, and told him, okay, so I'm having a reaction, it's a cornea, it's all red eye, I'm having all of the signs. RSVP is the what we have to look out for, so redness, RS, this is embarrassing, I now can't remember it. V is vision, P is pain, S is sensitivity to bright light. And I had every single one of those. It also felt hot and gritty, which is a couple more of the signs. So I went to this doctor and said, look, I've got this, I need to start taking the correct medication immediately. And I went up to eye casualty and waited for I was in there for 6 hours, and I kept asking what's going on. It turned out that the doctor, the vagtlærer, had basically just put on that young male experiencing redness in the eye. That's it. That's all he had put on the referral. And as soon as the doctor saw me, he was like, oh my goodness, okay, we should have started, I wish we'd have started you on the proper medication immediately, because it had got worse since, in the 6 hours that I'd been there, it had got worse. So I'm a little, well, of course I'm annoyed about that. So I was put on this, what are they called, Tobradex, Monopex, Maxidex. Maxidex is the eye drops that you use. So I was using those, I think, every hour on the hour for a few days, and then was able to drop down. And as soon as I started taking it, the vision got better, the pain got better. It was basically back to normal again. When I'd reduce the frequency of the drops, it would begin to come back. And so I'd start up again, and then it'd reduce again, and then it'd come back. And I went in one day, and the doctor took a look, and she asked me if I'd washed my contact lenses in water at all, and I had, and so I said yes. And if I'd had my contact lens in recently, and I tried it on a few days before because I was struggling with this eye, so I wanted to see if it was possible to wear it in this eye for a bit, and I had it in for a couple of minutes, and it wasn't possible, so I took it out again. But I think it may have rubbed a little bit on the front of the eye, because the doctor saw some interesting stuff in my eye, and she told me that she's 95% sure that I had an acanthamoeba keratitis, which is an eye infection where it is a cornea-eating amoeba that lives in water, soil, it's all around us, but as soon as it gets pressed in between a contact lens and an eye, then it can stick to the eye and start to eat and reproduce. She didn't ask me anything about my contact lens in water, because it's pretty much how I'm told to do it by my optometrist. I wash my contact lens in water and soap, a specific type of soap. Then I always put it into hydrogen peroxide solution afterwards. She didn't ask me this. She kind of, I think she just assumed, oh, water, fine then. But hydrogen peroxide after water would have killed the amoeba. So I wish that she'd have asked that, because then I would have been able to tell her. She may have made her a different diagnosis at that point. But yeah, anyway, she diagnosed me with this stuff. She was 95% sure, and she apologized because she said, this is going to hurt. You're going to hate me. These eye drops hurt. And so she started me on chlorhexidine, which is a liquid version of the stuff that you put on top of wounds as an antibiotic, and then Broline, which I'm not sure what that is, but both of them were extremely painful, and the Broline was especially painful. As soon as I started taking these, my eye flared up, went bright red. It was so painful. I had to take them on the hour, every hour, including overnight. So I had an alarm set that would wake me up every hour. I'd take these eye drops. They were so painful, I was screaming into my pillow just after taking them, because I've never experienced any pain like it before in my life. And I kept going back. Oh yes, at that point they took a cornea scraping. Yeah, it's as nice as it sounds. So they take a cotton bud and basically scrape the top layer of your cornea from your eye, and then they send that off to the lab, and then they can test that to see if there's any acanthamoeba in there. That came back negative, and I rejoiced at that because it was so painful. But she said this acanthamoeba is extremely difficult to get rid of, but also very difficult to diagnose. So, or get tested to make sure it's like definitely yes or no. And there are a lot of false negatives. And so she was still very sure that I still had it. So she kept me on the drops. I think I had 6 of those tests in total, every single one coming back negative, but we continued with them. More and more, my eye is beginning to... It's not only extremely painful, extremely red, extremely bloodshot, but my cornea is beginning to get white bits on the side, and that's spreading. It looks a little bit like when you see ice forming from one side of a glass to the other, and it kind of like spreads across. It's beginning to do that. I started to get holes in where my cornea transplant was originally kind of connected, where the scar was. That began to break down. My cornea and the donor cornea began to get very mushy and break down the joint in between them. So I was getting leakages of aqueous from the inside of my eye out of my eye, which was awful. After several, I mean, looking back at it now, it's easy to kind of see that I was getting a toxic reaction to this medication. But I'm not entirely sure why that wasn't addressed at the time. I go in one day, and I've noticed that this week my iris has stopped working. So the blue bit of my eye has, it usually sort of gets bigger and smaller to create the pupil getting bigger or smaller. It was just still. It wasn't getting bigger, it wasn't getting smaller, it was just fairly large and stationary. And I went in, and the doctor said, I think you must have noticed that this thing is going on with your iris. So you have fibrosis of the iris, but it's we expected this. I'm like, what do you mean you expected this? And she basically told me that it is a one of the side effects of the medication, and it was expected. Definitely wasn't told this at the beginning when I started taking the medication. If I had have been told those were possibilities, then I definitely would have asked for a second opinion on that. I got told in that meeting that sometimes it comes back, but she was pretty sure at that time that it was chronic. That was now fibrosis, and it was dead, which was a huge blow to me. A few weeks later, I go in, and in the scans I notice where they can take these amazing scans inside the eye, and so you can see a cross section from front to back, and then they can sort of rotate it all the way around, so you can see your cornea, your iris, your lens, which is your lens is the bit on the inside where people would get cataracts. I noticed that this is looking a little bit bigger and a bit whiter on the scan than it has before. So I asked them about it, and they said, yep, if you can see here, there's fibrosis in your lens, so you now have cataracts. We expected this. Not another one. You expected this as well? And yep, they expected this to happen. And again, I was not told about this. Very, very disappointed. Unfortunately, what also happened, because my eye was beginning to leak at the front, the eye is made up of two chambers. So you have a chamber at the back, and then the lens, then the iris, and then the cornea. And then in between the posterior chamber, the back chamber, is behind the lens, and the anterior chamber, the front chamber, is in front of the lens. And there was a leak in the anterior chamber, and so the pressure of the posterior chamber pushed pushed my lens all the way to the front, and so it was basically stuck up against my cornea. In doing that, in pushing it, and this was insanely painful, because of course as soon as it's pushed forward, it's stretching a bunch of muscles and things in there that it's not supposed to stretch, and so yeah, the muscles that can contract and release the lens so you can focus far and near, those really those were strained, and it was creating crazy headaches for me. And they noticed that they had the leak was there, and so the lens was pushing all the way up to the front. In doing that, it also pushed my iris up against my cornea, which is where it's stuck. So we have my cornea, and then we have my iris now stuck to my cornea at the front, which is god awful. They had another operation where they put an extra couple of stitches in. I think they actually put 4 stitches at the bottom to help seal these leaks, which worked for. And then they pumped some gel in the front bit to keep the lens away. And it stayed okay for a while, but before long, because I'm still taking all of these drops, I'm still taking all of these drops. Different parts of my cornea was beginning to break down. I was getting little black marks around the edge, so like proper dead tissue in there. And then after a while, I think it was about 3 months. This all took 3 or 4 months. I'm off work for all of this time because it's just so painful. I can't see anything and it's ridiculous. One of the things that happened in my checkups was that I was seen by a different doctor every single week. Somebody with the complexity of having this acanthamoeba keratitis plus cornea transplants plus keratoconus, which is the weakening of the cornea anyway, then I would have expected to be seeing the same doctor each week because it's like a high-risk case. Unfortunately, I was seeing a different doctor each week, and each of them would kind of start afresh as to, okay, so what's going on with your eye then? Like they hadn't read my notes. Some of them had read my notes, but we'd start from a beginning. And what they would usually do would be to take the pressure, have a look with the slit lamp, take a scan, and see, is it better or is it worse than last week? And the problem in doing this is because they didn't see it with their own eyes last week, so they don't necessarily, they can only make a judgment based on what's written down, albeit, so it's all based on opinions from doctors, albeit professional opinions. I'll give them that, professional opinions, but there has to be some tolerance in there as well. So whereas somebody has seen, it looks a bit like this, the next doctor might say it looks a bit like this as well, but they don't necessarily 100% concede if it's definitely better or definitely worse than the previous week. Besides which, we're still going with the original doctor's diagnosis. It wasn't until about 3 months in, and I saw one of the chief doctors there, who I think he was one of the first ones to look back at the entire period that I've been going there, and he seemed very concerned when I went in to see him, and he said, "I don't think that you ever had acanthamoeba." But I can't say that for sure, but I don't think that you ever did. I asked, at one point I asked to be seen, I think it was a couple of weeks earlier, I asked to be seen. There's a specific microscope called a confocal microscope, and that is one of the tools that they can use to definitely get a much better idea of if there is any acanthamoeba present or not. This hospital has a confocal microscope, but unfortunately it had been moved from the department because nobody knew how to use it apart from this one doctor. So when I asked him, can you go and have a look and see if I have this? And so we searched for it. He discovered that it was on two floors above. So we went to find it, and he got there, and it had been decommissioned. So it wasn't available to have a look. Again, I wish if I'd have known all of this stuff in the beginning, I could have gone for a second opinion, and I could definitely have visited Aarhus Hospital. I'm pretty sure has a confocal microscope and is able to use it. If not, I drive to London. I take a flight to London or somewhere, because eyes are so valuable. If I'd have had any clue of all of these side effects that I might experience, that would essentially kill my cornea, kill my iris, and kill my lens, then I would have definitely gone for a second opinion. I asked why they hadn't told me this, and they basically told me they generally don't tell people the side effects of this medication. And I kind of got a little bit of I asked why, and they didn't really give me a proper answer. But I think they didn't want to scare people, is pretty much what I managed to get. Everybody was very cagey when I was asking them about all of this stuff, because it had got to me by this point that maybe they had made a misdiagnosis, and I kept asking them about this stuff, and they were very cagey about sort of saying anything about what had been damaging my eye. I managed to get the Broline is very harsh, and it's probably that, more than likely the Broline, but doctors weren't able to give me a definite answer. I asked one of them, is this due to, are you saying that because that's reality, or are you saying that because there are legal implications, so why you can't tell me? And she did kind of nod her head and say, yep, legally I can't tell you that. So I'm guessing protecting themselves from a legal standpoint from misdiagnosis, I guess. Luckily I recorded a lot of the conversation, so I'll hopefully play them back at some point. Anyway, oh no, my alarm's about to go off again. I'll see if I can switch it off and come back. Okay, I'll just let the alarm go on and then I'll start a third video, because it cuts me out in 15 seconds. So there's all this stuff going on at the hospital, and then this one doctor says he doesn't think that I ever had acanthamoeba keratitis, but he reduced the drops that I was on, the ones that were so painful I was screaming. Oh god, yeah, I didn't even say, they were so painful I was put on I wasn't put on by the eye team. They didn't really have any ability to give me stuff that would treat pain in the eye, except paracetamol. And they said that that's not their specialty. They can't do pain medication in the eye. I have to go and see my GP. And I'm thinking that, like, you guys are the eye specialists. Yeah, basically they said that they can only look after the mechanics of my eye, really, and not the pain. So I had to go and see my GP, and they didn't really know what to prescribe. Luckily, I was able to join a Facebook group of people with acanthamoeba keratitis, and they had a bunch of suggestions as to the different medication that has worked from them. And so how this worked, I went to my GP with a list of different medications that I could possibly try that I found online. And he was great. He prescribed them to me, and we tried them, and the gabapentin, I can't remember most of them, but there were several of them, including morphine. The morphine was awful though. I would not recommend taking morphine to anybody, not tablet wise anyway. It's probably if you're in extreme pain and you need something to completely knock you out, then do it, but my god, apart from that, yeah, I wouldn't. So anyway, back to the doctor. Yeah, he basically said that he doesn't think I've ever had acanthamoeba keratitis, but we're now at the point where my cornea is collapsing. It's pushing my lens all the way to the front. My lens is dead. My iris is dead. My eye is in a really bad shape. That was the main thing. The pressure in my eye had dropped down to 4, which is it's at that danger zone for getting detached retina. And as soon as we got to there, he knew that we had to do something. So we tried to push it as long as possible whilst reducing the eye drops before he gave me a fresh cornea transplant. And it was done as an emergency cornea transplant, so I think I went in one day and they said, okay, we're going to do it in 2 days time, which is crazy to kind of set myself up for that. But I suppose there was nothing to lose at that point. And, well, I had to have it done because it was the only way, and I had the potential of a detached retina. I didn't want that. They decided that seeing as I had a cataract as well, they would do that operation at exactly the same time. It's called an open sky cataract surgery, where open sky because they take the cornea out the front and then they can do the lens replacement from outside rather than poking a little thing in the side of the eye. So they did that in one go. They kind of had to guess. They kind of had to guess as to sort of the strength that I needed because my lens wasn't in the right place for my eye. So they'd usually take measurements as to the positions, front to the cornea to the back of the eye, and then they can put the right power in so that I can get the right level of correction. And that if they put a different power in, then I could be short-sighted or long-sighted or anywhere in between. So they had to guess that. They did it by taking a scan of my other eye and assuming that, yeah, they're going to be fairly similar, so that's got to be a best guess. So they did that operation, and it was a very hurried operation, and it was a success. The cornea transplant went extremely well, very, very, very precise stitches, and then put this lens in, which I later found out means that I completely lose my ability to manually focus. So I cannot focus in and out. I won't have close vision with this, wouldn't have close vision with this. I would only have medium to long vision with it. I'd have to wear reading glasses to get close vision with it. Anyway, so this was going very well. The pressure was back up at around about 14-15, which is perfect. It should be between 10 and 20 with a median of about 15. If it's below 4 or 5, then it's dangerous for having a detached retina. If it is higher than 22 or 24, I can't remember exactly, then you're then at risk from glaucoma. And so this was in the perfect position. I'm getting close to the hospital now, so I'm kind of checking which way I need to drive. So yeah, it was going well but after a couple of weeks, and this was the weekend just before Pinsa in Denmark. It's like it's something to do with Easter, and it's a 4-day weekend, so Friday is off and Monday is off, including the hospital. So I had another operation on the Thursday because they had discovered a tiny little leak in the top corner of my cornea transplant, and they needed to seal that, otherwise it wouldn't heal properly, and that was quite an emergency operation as well. So they did that. Unfortunately, what they didn't realize at the time was that as my iris was dead and was pushed up against my lens, the dead iris was now blocking the natural drainage channel that my eye has. So it's called the trabecular meshwork, and it's a meshwork. It is like a mesh, and it's kind of in the corner where the iris meets the cornea. And so the aqueous is the liquid in the eye is aqueous, and it's created further back in the eye, and then it flows forward and then goes out in the trabecular meshwork. But this was now blocked, completely blocked, and so they did this stitching, and overnight I had again one of the worst worst pains that I've had in my eye, apart from having the medication, and it was absolutely ridiculously painful. I went into the emergency room on Friday. I wish I'd known earlier, because I could have gone in immediately Thursday evening and seen somebody. But I went in on Friday, and they tested my eye pressure, and it had actually got a little bit less painful in the morning, but still I went in. They tested my eye pressure, and it was 56. Extremely high. As soon as you're up at 56, then you're talking blindness from glaucoma within a matter of hours or days. And the reason being, I believe this is the reason being, the high pressure then means that the blood vessels can't make it. Yeah, the blood in your eye can't actually get to the macula, which is the back of the eye where it picks up the light signals. So it wasn't able to. Yeah, the blood wouldn't be able to flow into those areas because the pressure of the eye would be preventing it from going. Think about sort of when you push onto the back of your hand and you see a white patch. Still, it's the same thing. But unfortunately, because all of the doctors, all of the surgeons are away on Pincer weekend, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday, I basically spent all day, I think it was six to 8 hours, I was sat in eye casualty. They put me on specific tablets that are designed to dehydrate me, and in dehydrating me, they dehydrated my eye as well. They made everything taste absolutely awful, which was really horrible. But alongside this as well, oh yeah, I had lots of eye reducing eye drops. Basically everything that they could throw at me went in my eye, and these tablets. And then on top of that, they had me drinking glycerin, which is alcohol sugar. Yeah, oh god, just saying it, just thinking about it is making me want to throw up. It's like the most mega sweet and it's sweet, but it's really sort of it like burns your mouth and your throat as you drink it. And she gave me 2 cups, and I drank it, and then went to pick up. I was hoping that the second one was water, so I could just wash this down, but no, it was yet another cup of this glycerin. And I've never felt, it makes me feel ill just thinking about it. It was that bad. On top of that, of course, I'm not allowed to drink, or I'm allowed to have like very, very tiny sips of water. So I'm dehydrated, massive headache from being dehydrated. I'm having to drink this awful stuff that gave my huge stomach ache as well from drinking this stuff and the tablets, and basically just sat in hospital, in a chair in hospital for 3 days straight doing this. On the Monday, I'm so thankful that that particular doctor, the senior doctor that had said that he didn't think that I had the acanthemy, he came in on his day off to perform an operation on me, where he would basically try and he'd put a little slit in the side of my eye and then scrape the iris away from the cornea, basically to try and open up the trabecular meshwork again to see if that might work. And I'm so thankful he was able to do that. It did work for a few days, but I don't know, I think it was about a week or so went by, and then the flap of my cornea flapped back into place. And I think because there's a flow of liquid, because my iris was dead, there's nothing holding it in place, there's nothing holding it away from that area, and things will always flow to the drainage point. So my iris just flowed back into place and kind of sealed it again. So my pressure went up, and it was juggling around about 24, 36. It was 43 one day, and I'm having to do regular. No, I'm not at that point. Not at that point. So yeah, basically I'm now dealing with high eye pressure. Also, what's happening is one of the 100% way to tell if you have or have ever had acanthamoeba keratitis is to send the old cornea off to a lab to go through stringent microscopy or whatever you would call it. Basically, they look at it through a microscope, and they would 100% be able to see if there had ever been if there was or had ever been acanthamoeba keratitis. And it's because if they're alive, then they're in this like spiky form. I've forgotten what they're called, but when they're in that form. But if they're dead or hibernating, they go into a cystic form, so they're like a circle. They would have been able to see it in a scan of that. What actually happened, they sent my cornea off to 3 different testing places, and every single one of them came back with a negative for acanthamoeba keratitis, which is pretty conclusive that I didn't have it, and that I never had it in the first place. So generally all of this was for nothing, which is devastating to hear. Absolutely devastating, because I need not have gone through all of this stuff. But now I'm dealing with high eye pressure and glaucoma as well, so I went through this, and we got to the point where I'm taking 3 eye drops a day to reduce the pressure, and it's building and it's building and it's building, and we get to the point where every time I go in, it's 24, around about 24, and that's with all of the eye drops I can take, and that is risk of glaucoma within a while, weeks to months. So it's not good to keep it that way. Also, when I had my 56, they were able, unfortunately I did have damage to my retina and my optic nerve, so there were areas of my vision which were a little bit grey, and I literally just wasn't able to see anything through it, which is really scary as well. So yeah, I didn't want any more of that, if at all possible. So they booked me in as another emergency operation, which was to put a glaucoma release valve in my eye, which they did. And basically they put a tube into my anterior chamber, and then that tube leads to a plate that spreads the liquid out, and that is positioned round. I'm parked up now, so I can kind of do this right up around there, around the back of the eye. So that plate is positioned there in between the white of the eye. So they put a little sort of pocket in there, and then put this disc in with the tube. And this was a complicated operation because I didn't have an iris anymore. They usually put it in front of the iris, but the iris is pushed all the way forward, so they couldn't put it in front of the iris. So it was a bit of another specialist operation. So they've put this thing in, and unfortunately we went back to the position where I'm going in every week and I'm doing regular eye massages, but the pressure isn't going down. It's staying again in the 20s, 24, Even when I do the eye massage, and the eye massage is basically squeezing my eye at the bottom to push liquid through the tube and out into this area back here. It's called a bleb. And so my most recent operation is that they reopened the bleb and removed quite a lot of scar tissue. When scar tissue is created there, then the scar tissue prevents the liquid from being absorbed by the blood vessels and back into the body, and so there's nowhere for it to go. And so this time, yeah, they've removed a lot of the scar tissue. They put some special stuff in, which I think is a cancer treatment, but it's some type of stuff that they put in to help reduce the formation of scar tissue, and that will hopefully mean that I won't get scar tissue this time. After the operation, it was brilliant. It was down to 10, and it was down to 10 for like 2 weeks, so it was all looking good. And then all of a sudden, 5 days later, I go back in, it's 24 again. Absolutely devastated. But now I'm putting these eye drops in once a day now, and that seems to be working. And yeah, that seems to be working, or at least keeping it low enough that I can survive. The reason I have an eye patch on, I'm weird, I didn't start with that. The reason I have an eye patch on is simply because the vision is so bad, so blurry and so white, that I literally cannot really see anything out of my eye. So there's no point in having vision out of it, because it just makes it way more difficult for my eye to be able to see anything. So I have the eye patch on in order that I can see, at least out of one eye. And yeah, I'm here. I'm at the hospital, but I've got half an hour, so I'll keep on talking. So yeah, that's where I am right now with it, and there's lots of challenges up ahead. I'm in today for them to have a look at the pressure, but also the thickness of the cornea. It was looking a little bit thick last time I went in, and so they're going to have another look at that. One of the things that I'm experiencing is that my eye is very milky still, or my vision is very milky, and we think that the reason behind this is because the back layer of my cornea, I'm trying to remember the name of them, descemet membrane maybe, or endothelium cells, I can't remember off the top of my head, but those, the back layer of the cornea, it's a bunch of cells that are essentially pumps, and they constantly pump liquid out of the cornea and then into the aqueous. The reason that they do this is that the tissue is at its clearest when it is in a semi-dehydrated state. So it needs to be in semi-dehydrated in order for it to be extremely clear. And when it's high pressure in my eye, obviously those pump cells are having to work against a higher pressure, so they don't work so well. But also it just seems to be that they're not working as well as they should anyway, which is tough to hear from the doctor, because if this isn't resolved, then that means yet another cornea transplant, in order to, but not a full thickness one this time, luckily, but they would then take out and replace the back layer of the cornea. But it's another cornea transplant that I would have to recover from. And so there's definitely more operations on the horizon for me. I mean, just for starters, they have to remove all the stitches out of my cornea, and possibly the stitches from when they did the glaucoma implant. And then there might be a couple of things where they might need to put another glaucoma implant in or something different because it's not working quite as it should. Yeah, not looking forward to that. Yeah, let's have a look. I can kind of, oh, it's so difficult to see to do this, but so yeah, you can kind of see that, and then up in this top corner is where the bleb is. You can see like the dark lump. Oh, it's not so easy. That's why I keep this on. I basically keep this on because then I can, when I don't have it on, then I keep this eye shut, but I get a lot of muscle strain in this area here. It gives me headaches. So at least with this, I can have my eye open, but not have the brightness and everything. The iris. This is where I'm wondering if I'm ever going to get any useful vision from this eye ever again. The job of the iris is obviously to it gets smaller when there is more light, and that's to sort of limit you being blinded by the light, I suppose. And then it gets bigger in the dark to allow more light in so that you can see better in the dark. One of the issues that I have is that I don't have that, so it's just going to be bright the whole time, and it is very bright. But the other thing is when you have a cornea transplant, as I said earlier, you get a lot of distortion in the cornea. It's not perfectly spherical. So when you have a small, say if do I have any props in here that I can use whilst I'm in the car? Not really. I have a stone. So imagine, yeah, then this is kind of quite lumpy as well. So imagine that this is the cornea and you've got all of these lumps everywhere. If basically your iris is this big, then you're getting all of the distortion, you're seeing all of the distortion that is in all of these little bits here. Whereas if you've got a tiny little space there, then you're only seeing the distortion from a very small area there. And that would maybe easier to correct than correcting the whole thing. So you would get a lot less distortion and you'd be able to see better. I can see pretty well with correction and through a pinhole lens. But with my cornea, with my iris as it is, there's no chance. There are no contact lenses that are currently available that have anything painted, so that they have a small area there that I can wear. So there's nothing, no prosthetics that I can have on top. There are prosthetic irises that you can have, and they're amazing, tiny little discs made out of silicone, and they print. I think they would take a photo of my iris on this side, and they would print it onto this thing. They have a constant 3.2 millimeters hole in the middle, and then they roll it up, put it in a special syringe that they inject into the side of the cornea, and then they put it in, unravel it, and then I think they stitch it into the four corners to keep it in place. So there is the possibility of that. However, I'm now on I'm on 10 operations in the last year on this, which is a lot, and a lot of complication. The doctors are not really a fan of doing more operations than is necessary, and so they've basically told me that is probably not going to happen here. Doesn't mean I can't have it done somewhere else, like if I go to Germany. In fact, the company that does the best ones of these, I think, is in Germany. So, yeah. outlook is unsure for this, and I've been through one hell of a journey, and a journey that I needn't have gone through because I didn't even have a cantilever in the first place. He wasn't able to say what it could have been, but he thinks there may have been some other type of infection. And what would have been a good idea at the time, I was on a very narrow band antibiotic called chloramphenicol. It's sort of like it just does when you've got pink eye or when you have conjunctivitis. But they could have put me on a wide band antibiotic at the beginning, a wide spectrum antibiotic right at the beginning, and that would have basically been a good test as to, is it something else that we can treat with this? But they literally just went straight for acanthamoeba keratitis. Take the most harsh drugs that you can take. And yeah, it's the psychological impact of this on me has been terrible. So I'm currently off work with stress, exhaustion. Obviously I can't see so well quite often, but I started to go back to work, and I had a massive mental breakdown just before Christmas. And every so often I think about this, and I have a massive panic attack, because this eye, having a cornea transplant as well, isn't 100%. So this struggles on a daily basis, and that's my only eye that works. At some point in time, the probability that I will need another cornea transplant in this eye is fairly high.